Tell us the secret behind your early success, academic success in life.
My father came and told me one day there's this thing called JE. A lot of children won't even know about JE at that time. So I didn't believe I could get in. But that year, another classmate of mine got 325th rank in JE. And he used to come to me for doubts.
Kept it in my mind. I'll ask you IIT and IIM and then linked us, and then how did that happen?
I've always looked at myself and said, looking ahead and saying, what is it that I want to do? Never looking back and being a slave of my background.
And now we come to the ISDM story, why the genesis of ISDM.
Amazing individuals, amazing organizations doing great work, but all of them struggling.
You're also celebrating your 10 years now. Reflections on the last 10 years.
10 years for me has been, it's like I've reached base camp. But Mount Everest is ahead of us, so it's still early days. So I actually did a social experiment on myself. So I then quit Azim Premji Foundation and worked in a school in a village in a remote part of Kerala for a year.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. Hi, welcome back. This is Ankur Vora, Intersect by Masters Union podcast series. We have with us today another distinguished guest, Mr. Ravi Sreedharan, the founder and president of ISDM in Noida. Ravi sir, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
An honor to host you here. I met you recently at the IIM Ahmedabad conference and I heard your view on the philanthropy and the sector that you are working in right now. But I had an opportunity post hearing you. I was so impressed that I went through your profile and I saw amazing credentials. I mean, from IIT to IIM and then on to working in the global banking sector, and then coming back to India with Azim Premji University, and then setting up ISDM, wholly unique institution in its own. And I had made a point that I would love to host you at this podcast series, even if for a tiny bit of time, but we wanted your presence here so that our students can be motivated and our audience also realize the importance of the work that you're doing. So honored to have you here with us, sir.
Thank you.
So, sir, we'll start with your early life. I mean, going to an IIT in itself is a great celebration. But you went to IIT IIM, which is a dream for any Indian middle class boy to have. So, tell us the secret behind your early success, academic success in life.
I always say that I won an ovarian lottery. I was born in a family where I was fortunate to go to an English medium school. My father came, he used to work in a public sector in HAL. He came and told me one day, there's this thing called JE. A lot of children won't even know about JE at that time. And I thought my father was asking me to do something foolish because all India exam, where will I get in and all that. So I didn't believe I could get in. But that year, another classmate of mine got 325th rank in JE. And he used to come to me for doubts. And I said,
okay.
Oh my God, how did that happen? Wow. So next year I became actually...
And which city you were in?
I grew up for first 9 years in Orissa. There's a place called Koraput. And then for 5 years in Bangalore. So those are all the fortunate, right?
So your grade 12 happened in Bangalore?
Bangalore.
HAL?
Yeah. My father was working in HAL and I was in St. Joseph.
They have a huge setup in Bangalore, HAL.
Huge setup. Correct.
Right.
So I got through to JE. I mean, those days I used to think I'm so meritocratic across the country, so many million children. Because later on I realized that to write JE those days you needed to know English. That means there was only a small percentage. And then within that, not everybody believes that they can crack it. I was fortunate because one of my friends got the 325th rank, so made me feel confident. So when I talk to youngsters, I always say that, somewhere you have to believe in yourself because otherwise these opportunities will fade away. In fact, people think, JE, so many people write, CAT, so many people write. But actually you're competing in a small set that believes that they have an actual chance of getting it. So I was very fortunate to have that. But then I went to IIT, and then IIT is, of course...
IIT, BHU.
I went to BHU, Bharat University.
Amazing.
And that was amazing because, first of all, you've just come out of 12th standard. You're living in a hostel with some of the brightest kids from the country and all over the country. And then you also then have lots of extracurricular activities, whether it's sports, it's technology, it's cultural activities. It makes you quite a phenomenal personality.
And BHU in itself is a legacy institution. I've been to their campus myself in Banaras, and amazing just being at that place. I mean, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji has done a fantastic job of building that institution from ground up. And again, a case study in philanthropy. I mean, the way he went around
In
building
fact,
that
Madan
institution.
Mohan Malviya is partly my inspiration because there are a lot of stories of him standing in the queue with the Kashi Maharaj to ask him for some money to build a university.
So I had the honor of visiting the museum at the campus, and just to see those photographs and the story of him building BHU is one of legends. And so I'm sure you are inspired by him. You studied at his institution.
Absolutely inspirational. Yeah. Mahatma Gandhi gave his first public talk ever at BHU.
BHU, yes, absolutely. So amazing place to be in. I think, and we'll come to this, but I think the roots of your interest in social sector
I agree.
maybe
You're
also come from
absolutely right,
BHU.
Ankur. You know, I sometimes ask myself, so what is it that, how is it, why is it so exciting? People ask me, my batchmates who are from IIM and all that. And I tell them that I've gone back to being what I used to be in BHU. A little bit carefree, wanting to make a difference, want to help people. We used to do a lot of flood relief and adult education and all that. So in many ways, I went back to being what I was in my BHU. So you're absolutely right.
Perfect. And then after IIT, IIM happened. I mean, it was like an automatic choice.
So not really, because after engineering, I stayed back.
And this was in year 1985.
1985.
You graduated.
Correct. So my batchmate, 95% went abroad those days, Ankur. And I have a special needs brother, so I knew I couldn't go back because those days when you went abroad, you didn't come back.
That was a one-way ticket. Yeah.
Correct. So I chose to stay back, and I worked as an engineer. But those days, engineering was really nothing. I was working in BEL, which had the most amazing machines. What we used to get in those days, at least, ammonia prints would come from some other part of the world, and we would just produce it here. And there was no value add at that time. I mean, today the world is different. Yeah. That's when I said, maybe an MBA is a good idea, and I wrote CAT. Now, once you're coming from an IIT, you think, ye to main crack karu. Like that sort of attitude. And I was fortunate I got through to IIM Ahmedabad, which again takes you to another level because, you're in a group of people who are supposedly the best in the country and all that. So IIM Ahmedabad is where I started shaping my professional sort of aspirations. And I was just telling your students here that I wanted to be in the creative space because I was in theater, I was in skits, I was in public debate, speaking and all that. So I chose to be in advertising.
I saw on LinkedIn, Lintas was your first job and you were there for a bit. And I had kept it in my mind. I'll ask you, IIT and IIM and then Lintas, and then how did that happen?
Again, this is something I tell youngsters that I've always looked at myself and said, looking ahead and saying, what is it that I want to do? Never looking back and being a slave of my background. Engineering kiya to engineering banna hai, that never worked for me. Creative space, abhi mere ko acha lagta hai, I want to go into the creative space. And it was so exciting. I'll give you an example. So I must have produced about 20, 25 ad films in my days at Lintas. And there was a young boy who used to produce all our music. He was very low cost, and it helped us because low cost helps with us. And his name was Dilip. All of you know him as A.R. Rahman.
Oh, yes.
Can you imagine? So I got to work with some amazing people, produce some. I really enjoyed it. And then I wanted to be a client. So then I went to the other side and I joined Standard Chartered Bank those days. They were just going to launch credit cards in India. And credit cards was very new, and I was fascinated. How do you just take a piece of plastic and pay for things and, you can do whatever you want? It really excited me. And the second thing, as a marketing person, banks normally worked only in the vicinity of the bank. Credit card suddenly meant the bank served people across the country. You could buy a credit card anywhere. And I was very excited about that. So I applied for that. And I remember writing to them saying being young is not a crime because they wanted somebody with 15 years experience and I had 5.
It's not a crime. I love it. My students will love this line. Yeah.
And I got the job. They wanted 15 years experience.
And you wanted 15 years experience
and I had 5.
You had 5 and you made it. Wow.
Because of maybe that line and maybe also because Standard Chartered at that time had been brought down by Harshad Mehta's scam.
Oh, the scam in 92.
So they were trying to rebuild. So maybe that's my sort of fortune also that they hired me. But once you get in, you realize that doing the job is much easier than getting this job. Yeah. So we were the 17th credit card to launch in the country. Within 1 year, we were the number 2 brand in this country. And today, of course, Standard Chartered is a very big brand. So that was also very successful. Around that time, my father-in-law had a surgery he had to do, open heart surgery, and I didn't have money to pay for it. And I said, I'm in a very high-paying job at that time, but I couldn't afford a surgery. That's when I realized, I need to figure out how to make money. Also, there's a lower middle class background that I had. Yeah. So then I decided to take my career abroad.
Yeah, and then you went to Indonesia.
Correct.
That's
No,
what
I went to the Middle East.
Oh yes, please
Yeah.
share this
So
part of
there,
it.
I actually went back to advertising there because my friends from my Lintas days called me and said, we want somebody for a banking client in Dubai. That was a disaster because advertising in the Middle East, at least those days, was primitive. I mean, it was 20%.
I've lived in Dubai, so I know.
Oh, there you go. Right. So it was discounts or more discounts. There's nothing creative. It was very transactional. You don't build brands. You don't build relationships. At least at that time. Now it's different. 1 year I didn't like that. So I came back to HSBC, who hired me as the head of card sales and marketing for Middle East Africa.
So you came back to banking.
Banking again. 1 year I was away, but banking. And then 15 years I stayed with HSBC, and I had a great run, Ankur, because I then became the head of internet banking and across Asia Pacific. Then I was sent to Indonesia to run the retail bank there. Then we did so well. Then we bought a bank there. Then I was made the CEO of that bank. So every year or 2 years, I was getting promotion. And becoming the CEO for me was like a dream achieved. I mean, as a boy, when I started, if somebody told me if you became the CEO of a foreign bank in a foreign country, that was the height of my aspirations. So I had achieved that when I was early 40s. So after that, my heart started thinking of, where is life? What's the meaning of life? And money, of course, beyond a point is really no value. And you remember I told you that school education is what got me into all these opportunities. So I decided that I want to come back to India and work in the school education
Education sector. Yeah. And that's where you came back with Azim Premji.
And Azim Premji
as the head of education.
Leadership and management.
Leadership and management.
Correct. And because what Azim Premji figured out is for good school education, the most important thing is the teacher and the transaction of the teacher. The second most important is the school leadership, which nobody really realized. And since I was in a management background, they told me, can you figure out what is education, leadership, and management? That's where my journey started. And I want to say something very important because, when you come in as the CEO of a bank and now you're coming to the social sector, pardon me for saying this, but you come with some arrogance, I've done a lot. I mean, I know all this. I'll teach you guys some, whatever. But, when I started working in the social sector, then I was traveling around the world in the deserts of Rajasthan, to the hills of Uttarakhand, to the forests of Chhattisgarh.
Acha, you traveled
all over villages, deepest corners, okay?
With Azim Premji?
Azim Premji Foundation. And I would find, and I realized that running a not-for-profit in a rural background is actually more complex than running a startup in Bangalore where I live. Because the challenges are different, the resources are limited, the stakeholder forces are very complex. So I started really feeling humbled and admiring these people who are doing really, really amazing work. And that's where, my life then started revolving around that. But there's an interesting thing that I don't know if you know this, but after about 5 years at Azim Premji Foundation, I was really getting more and more immersed in the whole social sector. My heart bled for, the weaker sections of society. I asked myself, am I doing this for the ego of working in this big organization and saying that, we work with 150 million children in 50 districts? And I actually decided, will you work in one school and proudly tell the world you only work in one school? So I actually did a social experiment on myself. So I then quit Azim Premji Foundation and worked in a school in a village in a remote part of Kerala for a year.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right. So there's 1 year I did that. That was even more humbling because, at Azim Premji, you would work with MHRD, with, on the new education policy or continuous assessment.
Some very, very large, impactful, large-scale work. Yeah.
But then when you go down to the school and try to run it, it's so different. The community's aspirations are different. The dynamics and the politics are different. The economic sources are different. And that's one side of it. So it's very complex. But the other side is when you live in a community for a year or whatever longish period, the love you get from them, Ankur, you cannot put a dollar value to that. My salaries and my bonuses, I could not compare with this. You'll be walking just down, taking an evening walk, and somebody will come running out, say, I want you to come in and meet my mother. Or somebody, this is the, teacher, or whatever they'll call you, teacher or president or whatever it is. That love was amazing. So I just kept going more and more sucked into the development sector. The love you get, the difference you can make, and feeling good about what you're trying to do. Whether you're making a difference or not, at least you're trying to make a difference. Was very, very inspiring for myself.
So this school you were running yourself or just a little bit?
So there was a school that was running. It was run by a CSR project of one of the companies. and the owner was from that village.
Okay.
So he wanted to do something. So he put his money to set up the school. So when he met me, he said, listen, I can set up a school and I know that education, but I don't know what does good education mean and how do you run a good school? So I spent a year with them trying to figure out all that. And that was
Transformative for you.
very transformative. And in fact, one other thing that happened, Ankur, there is because I was working there, I was there only for 1 year because then ISDM started after that. There are 7 children who are studying at that time in the 11th and 12th standards. And I suggested to them, and this is a school meant for the weakest sections from an economic background. 7 children who came to study at Azim Premji University, because I knew Azim Premji was starting an undergrad program. They would get all scholarships. So they came there. But after they came there, they got scholarships. The fees was waived, but you still need to buy your toothpaste and soap and
absolutely.
sanitary napkin. And they didn't even have that. So slowly I became a local guardian. Okay. Today they've become like our kids, my wife and I. So when they come for their holidays, they come to our house and stay. So our life has changed significantly in this course of working in the development sector.
God bless you. And now we come to the ISDM story. I mean, a path-breaking institution. So please, sir. I mean, why
Yes.
the genesis of ISDM?
Yeah. So, basically when I was working in Azim Premji Foundation, traveling across the country, I'd meet amazing individuals, amazing organizations doing great work, but all of them struggling. And what seemed very obvious to me was that they were struggling with management challenges, which is managing money, managing people, managing processes, technology, governance, etc., etc. And I said, you guys have figured out the more difficult part of how to, work on the education of girls from a very oppressed background, from a tribal language or whatever. And you're going to shut down because you didn't file your tax returns or you didn't file your governance or whatever. And I said, that's the easy part, right? So then I started this journey of, okay, if there was good management, then this good work that's happening could really expand in the country. So I started on that journey and, again, sitting one day, I asked myself, you studied at an IIT and IIM. In those days, you paid very little money, so taxpayers' money. I studied. What have you done for the country? I'd only given my own family a good lifestyle and that's it. So I said, well, if I could make a difference to management of these organizations across the country, it'll unleash a huge benefit to the bottom of the pyramid in the country, if you like. So I started on that journey, very quickly realized that you cannot run a school like you would run a bank. You can't run a women's empowerment organization like you run an IT company or whatever, because the purpose is different, the dynamics are different, the resources are different. And then I started the journey of figuring out what is this management that is required for the social sector. And I went around the world, and there is a lot of places where they do not-for-profit management programs, but they are basically trying to apply business management to social sector.
Around the world. Yeah,
around the world. So US,
not only in India.
Asia, Europe, everywhere.
Yeah, I read you traveled the world to find out.
And I came back and I was quite disillusioned because I couldn't find anything. And I met this gentleman whose name is S.C. Bihar. He used to be the chief secretary of Madhya Pradesh twice over. Amazing mind, way ahead of her times. He was the one who said, so Ravi, you're telling me the sector needs management. You're telling me that the management that currently exists doesn't work in the space. In which case he said, why don't you go figure it out? I said, sir, what do you mean figure it out? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. He said, well, when National Institute of Design was set up, they actually went to the practitioners. And I know Masters Union believes in the whole side of practice, right? So he said, you go to the practitioner and ask them what you do. So I believe NID went to carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers, and asked them, how do you design? And they said, we make lines, we draw arcs, we create layers, we look at nature, we see colors, we mix and match. And he said, that's how they built first principles of design. So he said, if you want to build this discipline, build it from the first principles. Wow. So we're building our theory from practice.
Practice, exactly. So, music to our ears.
Correct. That's exactly right. So which is why I'm getting so excited watching your students and all that. So that was how we started. And the second thing, we met a gentleman called Professor Tushar Shah, who was the youngest director of IRMA. IRMA is the Rural Management
Institute of Rural Management, Ahmedabad.
Correct. He was the one who told us that it's not enough if you produce some students. If you want to make a difference in this country, you have to figure out how do you convince organizations, why do they need your students? Yes. You need to produce the faculty for this. Yes. You need to write the case study. Yes. So that again makes us unique because we are the only institution in the world that's actually working on the entire ecosystem of development management. And the The third thing is we said that, youngsters will get inspired if you create a wow institution. National Law School, when it was set up 30 odd years ago, nobody was interested in law.
Yeah.
But today it's top 3 choices for youngsters because, NLS is there all over and things like that. So we want to build theory grounds up. We want to work on the whole ecosystem. And we want to build the world's best school for development management. I'll just close by saying, Ankur, that India borrowed engineering from the West. We borrowed medicine from the West. We borrowed management from the West. But I think on the development space, and the Prime Minister said it in his G20 speech, that we should teach development. This is the country which is the largest country, the great economic potential, great intellectual capabilities. Can we teach the world how to do development management? So I'm of the view that India is on a trajectory where the economic growth, we all know we're going to become a $25 trillion economy. And the $350 billion of development capital we have every year will become $2 trillion, which is the size of this entire country. This country has not had so much development capital in centuries. So it's a historical opportunity for India to make a difference to the people of this country.
And I think you're also celebrating your 10 years now, 2016.
Yes. This is the year. 10th anniversary.
So, and reflections on the last 10 years?
So the 10 years for me has been, it's like I've reached base camp, but Mount Everest is ahead of us. So it's still early days. But I think the conviction is very high that the country will benefit immensely if you're able to produce good development management talent who will go into what I call Samaj Sarkar and Bazaar. So we need them.
ये वाला जो कॉन्सेप्ट है सर आपका समाज सरकार और बाजार, ये जरा बता दीजिए हमारे बच्चों को और हमारे व्यूअर्स को ताकि वो भी समझें कि रेलेवेंस क्या है सोशल सेक्टर का.
So true. So sir, I believe that our society has 3 very important pillars. So, and that's what I say, Samaj Sarkar or Bazaar. So Sarkar is the government, Bazaar is the market, and Samaj is society or civil society, if I can call it that. And I believe for a flourishing civilization, all these 3 pillars have to be strong. अगर एक भी लुढ़क जाता है, you will have a very poor society. And that's why you have to have a strong management in each of these places. Today, there is very strong management in business, MBA. There's very strong business management in the government, which is public administration. There's nothing in the social sector. And that's why my belief is if I build the strength there, and I am also of the view, and this I will tell my social sector friends, that the world will not be a better place only because of NGOs. The world will be a better place because of NGOs, because of business, and because of government. ये तीनों जब मिलेंगे तभी change होगा. So I'm of the view that we build this pillar of development management, and then we'll have a very good talmel of these 3 verticals. So I believe that eventually that's what will change the world.
Amazing, sir. I think, as I said, one of the most beautiful articulations on the relevance of the social sector I learned from you. And the work that you're doing is transformational. More power to you, more power to ISDM and the team you are leading there. Thank you so much for being here on our podcast. An honor for us to at Masters Union.
If I may take one liberty and say that I got very inspired seeing Masters Union because of that idea of whatever in a vocational course, it has to connect to practice.
Yeah.
Vocation can't be just, it's like somebody told me, right? You don't learn swimming from a textbook or you don't, So I really like that idea. So that's what we do at ISDM. How do you build this? So thank you.
Honor that you are resonating and you're already building an institution that is on the similar ethos and values. So more power to you, sir. And we look forward to deepening our collaboration in coming days.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.